Okay, today we're going to talk about the human body, and we're going to focus in on organs, the main organs in the body. But before we get to that, we'll do a little bit of review. As we've talked before about the hierarchy of life, we have our different levels. We start with chemical level, where we talked about atoms come together to form molecules, and if we skip ahead a little bit, on the cellular level, we know we have a group of cells, and when you have a group of cells, that'll create tissues. You have a group of tissue that come together to create organs, and then we move on to organ systems and organisms. On this slide, we have a picture representation of that information. So again, we go from atoms to molecules to cells to tissue. We have organs down here. We move over to organ systems, which will leave us with an organism. So this is stuff that we've talked about before, which should have been a somewhat of a review for you guys. And again, today we're going to focus in on the major organs in the human body. We mentioned before in class that we have about 78 organs in the human body, but if you want to break them into categories of the major organs, we can break that down to 10. Maybe some people break it down to 13 major organisms. Today we're going to focus in on 10 of those organisms. So what you might want to do is take a few notes on some of the important things that I'll point out during this presentation. We'll start with skin. Skin is known as the largest organ in the human body, and as you can see here in this diagram, it's broken down into three parts or three layers. You have your epidermis, which is the upper layer and the layer that you see and manipulate most of your life. Then you have your dermis and your hypodermis. Skin plays an important role in temperature regulation. It also serves as protection. And when we say temperature regulation, that links back to when we talked about homeostasis. So when you get too hot, you'll sweat and perspire to cool off, and when you get cold, you'll shiver and your hair will raise to kind of warm you up. So, and your skin regulates a lot of that. Your skin also includes your hair follicles and your sweat glands. Moving on to the brain. You can see in this picture the brain is divided into four different lobes, and each lobe will have a different function, and we'll talk about that more in later classes. But we can see we have the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe, and then in the back of all of that you have your cerebellum. Your brain serves as one of your main organs. It controls daily functions and receives impulses from nerve cells and nerve tissue throughout the body. One cool fact about the brain is that the actual brain itself has no nerve cells. So technically the brain does not feel any pain. Next we have the heart. This diagram is a really good diagram because it shows you the movement of blood throughout the heart. So heart is made up of four distinct parts. You have two atriums to the top, your right atrium and your left atrium, and you have your ventricles down to the bottom. A cool trick I used to use to remember which was which is that the atriums, if you look at it, which forms an A, is always on top of the V. So, and the V is kind of like an upside down A without the part in the middle. So you have your atriums on top and your ventricles below. And then you have veins and arteries in the heart. So if you notice, the blood enters here off to the side through these veins. So veins bring blood to the heart, and you'll notice that it comes into the vein, down the atrium, into the ventricle, and then it leaves out of the heart through the arteries and the aorta. So veins bring blood to the heart, and arteries take blood away from the heart. And that's something that you need to remember. And again, the heart essentially just pumps blood throughout the body, sends it to the lungs to get oxygenated, and then sends it to the other organs in the body so that needs the blood. Next, we move on to our lungs. You'll notice the lungs connected to your trachea. Your lung can be divided into three lobes. You have your upper lobe, your middle lobe, and your lower lobe. And then on the inside of the lungs, it's made up of bronchi or bronchioles. And again, the lungs are located in the upper portion of your chest, and essentially it allows us to take in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. And then once you move on from the lungs, The muscle, the diaphragm, is what will separate your lungs from the rest of your body. Right underneath your diaphragm sits your liver. The liver is broken up into two lobes. And actually, if you look at this picture right here, you'll see this tan piece of muscle. This is actually the diaphragm as well. So the diaphragm will sit on top here, and then part of the diaphragm is going to split the two lobes of your liver. So you'll have the right lobe and your left lobe, and tucked right under the liver is the gallbladder, which has its own function. And we're not going to talk about that right now, but um, the liver sits more on the left side of the body, and its main function is to produce bile, which helps with digestion in the stomach. Liver also filters out toxins from the blood and helps regulate blood sugar. Liver is also your largest internal organ. So the skin, though it's on the outside, is our largest organ, but the liver itself is the largest internal organ in the body. Moving on, next we'll talk about the stomach. So the stomach is connected to our esophagus, and essentially, and if you look at this, the stomach has these little folds. So the stomach does two things. It works for chemical digestion and physical digestion. So you can kind of look at your stomach, or kind of think of your stomach as short-term food storage. So it allows us to eat quickly, and then over time we can digest that food. And it's digested two ways: chemically, by the acid that's produced in your stomach. So your stomach produces a strong acid that's going to digest that food chemically. And then physically, these ridges are going to allow something we call peristalsis, which is muscle contractions that helps to digest and break down the food in your stomach. Moving on from there, connected to the stomach is your small intestine. So after the food passes through your stomach, it goes into your small intestine, and the small intestine is broken down into three parts that you can see right here, three distinct areas. And the main job of the small intestine is to absorb nutrients from the food that you eat. So you'll eat the food, it'll move through your stomach, go into your small intestines, and the small intestine is going to absorb those nutrients and put it into your blood. Um, Interesting fact, even though we call it the small intestine, it's actually longer than the large intestine. The reason we call it the small intestine is because it's narrower than the large intestine. So small intestine is about 5 meters long, and it's longer than your large intestines. Next, we'll have the large intestine. So you'll see right here, this area right here is where the small intestine connects to the large intestine. So far we've had the stomach and the small intestine that are focused on digestion. The large intestine is the last part of the digestive tract. So the last part that works on digestion. And what the large intestine really does is that it's going to absorb all the excess water from anything that's left over in the small intestine. So small intestine really absorbs nutrients, and it'll put it into your blood. The large intestine is going to absorb water and then turn everything else into fiber. And the large intestine itself is only about 1.5 meters in length. So again, it's shorter than the small intestine, but it's larger in size. Next up, we'll talk about the pancreas. Your pancreas is, as far as position, if you look at this picture right here, it's a little bit under the liver, and it sits behind the stomach. So right here is where the stomach will be in front of it, and behind that is your pancreas. And the pancreas is also kind of connected to the gallbladder. If you look at this picture over here, the stomach is removed, so the stomach would be sitting right here, and the pancreas sits behind your stomach. Main job of your pancreas is kind of two things. It creates enzymes that help digest food, so it creates enzymes to help digest proteins and different things like that. And then it creates two specific uh, two specific products, insulin and glucagon, which focus on regulating blood sugar levels. So your people who suffer from diabetes, when their pancreas is not functioning properly, is the thing that's going to cause the diabetes is it's going to affect how much insulin and glucagon their bodies produce. Next up, we have the kidneys. You have two kidneys, one on the left side and one on the right side. The kidneys are kind of located to the bottom of your rib cage and towards the back of your body. So if you were to place your hand on your back, it's kind of that's closer to where your kidneys would be. As you can see from this picture, they're bean shaped and they're typically red, typically the size of a fist. And the kidney's main function is to help create urine. It takes waste products and excess water in the blood, and it's going to create that urine. And then it's going to release that into your bladder. Cool fact, about a quarter of your body's blood is filtered through your kidneys every minute. So your kidneys are very active and they're always at work. And those are about the 10 major organs in the body. Again, this shows you a couple more, but those are the 10 major organs that we're going to kind of focus in on. In some further presentations, we'll focus in on three. We'll focus in on the heart, the brain, and the kidneys. But these are 10 major organs that you need to be very familiar with. Don't forget to answer your questions and submit your answers through Edmodo.